Origins of rebellion on wheels. It started with a rumor, a small, Defiant machine built not to follow the rules, but to break them. It wasn't powerful. It wasn't polished, but it carried an energy that spread through garages, back roads, and underground meets like a spark searching for fuel. A rebellion was forming. Quiet at first, then unmistakable. Today, its image lives on walls, in stories, in memories of a generation that refused to accept what the industry told them they should want. This was more than a car. It was a movement. And to understand its rise, we need to return to the moment when drivers stopped being consumers and started becoming creators. The automotive world had grown rigid. Manufacturers dictated trends. Designers followed formulas. Every new model felt predictable. Bigger grills, smoother panels, safer choices. But beneath the surface, something was shifting. A younger crowd wanted expression, identity, freedom. They were tired of machines built for conformity. They wanted cars they could shape with their own hands. Into this landscape arrived a modest, unassuming vehicle. It was cheap. It was small. It was technically unimpressive. And yet, that simplicity became its greatest power. The car asked for nothing and offered endless possibility. Its engine was easy to tweak. Its frame welcomed modification. Its parts were accessible, interchangeable, almost inviting experimentation. Suddenly, creativity replaced compliance. Young drivers bought it not for what it was, but for what it could become. They stripped weight, swapped engines, reinforced suspensions. They tuned the exhaust until it roared with personality. Each modified machine became a statement, a rejection of perfection in favor of expression. Car culture began shifting from polished showrooms to messy garages lit by passion and cheap work lamps. At first, manufacturers ignored the trend. They believed the movement was a phase, a passing fascination among hobbyists with too much time. But then the numbers appeared. Sales climbed. Aftermarket industries exploded. Street events filled with crowds cheering for cars that didn't fit any corporate mold. This humble machine had become the anchor of an uprising that no marketing team had planned. But beneath the celebration, tension was brewing. Regulators saw danger. Executives saw lost control. And what began as expression soon faced pressure from forces far more powerful than a community of young dreamers. Because the rebellion on wheels was no longer just a trend. It was about to become a challenge to the entire structure of the automotive world. The challenge emerged slowly, hidden beneath the excitement of a culture finding its voice. As more young drivers transformed the modest machine into something wild and expressive, the movement grew louder, more visible, more impossible to ignore. Parking lots became weekend workshops. Abandoned industrial zones turned into midnight proving grounds. And social circles that once bonded over music or fashion now united around torque wrenches, welders, and the thrill of creation. But with visibility came scrutiny. Local authorities noticed the gatherings. Insurance companies flagged unusual modification claims. News outlets ran stories warning of unsafe custom builds, often misunderstanding the care and precision many enthusiasts poured into their work. What outsiders saw as recklessness, insiders saw as craftsmanship. Yet perception had already begun shifting, and tensions rose as society struggled to understand a movement built around freedom rather than conformity. Manufacturers felt the pressure too. Executives watched as their carefully crafted brand identities were overshadowed by home-built machines stealing attention at shows and events. They launched campaigns celebrating their latest models, but the younger generation wasn't impressed. They didn't want cars that arrived finished. They wanted unfinished canvases, cars that could reinvent, redefine, reshape. The message was clear. The rebellion wasn't just cultural, it was economic. Meanwhile, the aftermarket industry exploded. Small garages became modification hubs. Part suppliers flourished. Entire companies were built around upgrades, kits, and customization tools. A parallel economy emerged, one that existed outside traditional corporate control. Enthusiasts celebrated the freedom. Executives worried about losing influence. Regulators questioned how to maintain safety in a world where vehicles evolved faster than the laws that govern them. As the scene expanded, the cars themselves became symbols of defiance. Each build carried its owner's fingerprints, scratches from late-night adjustments, mismatched bolts from improvisation, hand-wrapped wires that only the creator understood. These weren't imperfections. They were signatures, proof that identity could be engineered. But rebellion always invites resistance. Pressure began tightening from several directions at once. Laws proposed stricter limits on modifications. Manufacturers pushed warranties designed to discourage aftermarket changes. Insurance companies raised premiums on cars associated with the movement. The freedom that defined the culture was being squeezed by systems designed to minimize uncertainty. Inside garages, conversations shifted. Enthusiasts felt the weight of being misunderstood, the frustration of watching something they loved become politicized. Yet they refused to surrender. They found new ways to work around regulations. They formed organizations to fight restrictive laws. They shared knowledge openly, helping newcomers build safely and responsibly. Their passion strengthened in response to the pushback, but the most dramatic tension came from within the movement itself. As popularity soared, new crowds joined, not for creativity, but for spectacle. Dangerous stunts, reckless driving, viral videos chasing shock value. These moments ignited controversy and threatened to overshadow the heart of the culture. Responsible builders watched with growing unease. Their rebellion wasn't meant to cause chaos. It was meant to reclaim identity. The movement stood at a crossroads. Pursue expression that honored its roots, or risk being defined by the loudest, least careful voices on the fringe. And as pressure mounted from outside and inside, the community realized something essential. To survive, the rebellion couldn't just continue. It had to evolve. And that evolution was about to reshape not only a culture, but the automotive world watching closely from the sidelines. The evolution began with a quiet shift. Small groups of builders meeting not just to modify cars, but to redefine what the movement stood for. They gathered in dim garages, old warehouses, and borrowed workshop corners, reflecting on how far the rebellion had come and how fragile it had become. The culture they loved was at risk of being eclipsed by noise, spectacle, and misunderstanding. They knew the only way forward was to reclaim the narrative before someone else rewrote it for them. These builders weren't interested in chaos. They valued precision, creativity, and the craft of engineering something personal from something ordinary. They believed the rebellion's power came not from breaking rules, but from rewriting expectations. And so they formed alliances, loose networks of enthusiasts determined to demonstrate that modification could be responsible, safe, and deeply meaningful. They organized sanction meets with vetted cars and experienced drivers. They published guides teaching newcomers proper installation, torque specs, wiring safety, and braking upgrades. They reached out to local officials, explaining the culture instead of hiding from it. Slowly, the tone began to shift. What once looked like reckless defiance started to resemble a grassroots engineering movement built on discipline and knowledge. But the pressures didn't disappear. Manufacturers continued pushing back, releasing models that were harder to modify, hiding critical components behind proprietary software locks. Regulators tightened inspection requirements. Insurance companies targeted customized cars with higher premiums and stricter policies. The message was clear. The rebellion was still unwelcome in the world of structured control. Inside the community, frustration simmered. The rebellion had matured, but the world refused to see it. Skilled builders felt punished for the mistakes of a reckless minority. Younger fans felt discouraged before they even began. Conversations turned tense in garages once filled with laughter. Was a movement destined to be pushed into the shadows forever? Then came a turning point that no one expected. A major automotive exhibition, traditionally reserved for polished, corporate-built concepts, included a new category: independent custom builds. A space dedicated to craftsmanship outside factory walls. The announcement sent shockwaves through the community. For the first time, a major institution acknowledged their work not as chaos, but as creativity. Builders sprang into action. Teams formed overnight. They stripped cars to bare shells, rebuilt frames, handcrafted body panels, engineered suspension geometry worthy of professional circuits. They poured everything into these machines, not for rebellion, but for respect. And when the exhibition opened, crowds swarmed the new section. Journalists praised the ingenuity. Engineers admired the resourcefulness. Even executives, once dismissive, studied the builds with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. But progress always brings conflict. Some critics accused the community of selling out, of abandoning the raw spirit that defined its roots. Others feared the newfound attention would invite stricter oversight. A quiet divide began tearing through the culture, those who wanted recognition and those who wanted purity. The rebellion was no longer united by a single purpose. It was fragmenting. As debates grew louder, a realization settled over the community's oldest members. They had reached the emotional center of their movement. The battle to define its purpose. Was a rebellion about rejecting the industry or reshaping it? Was it about defiance or self-expression? Could it be both or neither? The pressure reached a breaking point when a highly publicized incident reignited stereotypes and threatened to undo everything the responsible builders had accomplished. The media seized the moment. Critics resurfaced. Regulators tightened their gaze. It felt like the movement's progress had evaporated in a single night. And yet, even as backlash mounted, something deeper was forming, an understanding that the rebellion's identity was not fixed. It was evolving, stretching, struggling to grow in a world that didn't yet know how to make space for it. The culture stood on the edge of transformation, uncertain whether it would fracture or forge a stronger identity. One thing, however, had become unmistakable. The next chapter would determine whether the rebellion survived or became just another fading myth in automotive history. The turning point arrived when the community finally confronted the question it had avoided for years. What did the rebellion truly stand for? The incident that reignited public criticism pushed builders, organizers, and devoted enthusiasts into the same rooms, some angry, some exhausted, all unwilling to let their culture be defined by the worst version of itself. And for the first time, the movement began to speak with unified voice. They acknowledged the mistakes. They confronted the recklessness. But they refused to let sensational headlines overshadow a culture built on creativity, skill, and passion. Meetings stretched late into the night as veterans of the scene worked side by side with newcomers, forging a new ethos, one centered not on defiance for its own sake, but on the right to shape a machine into a reflection of self. Workshops opened their doors to mentorship programs. Builders created inspection standards that rivaled professional shops. Events partnered with local authorities to create safe, legal spaces for demonstrations. The rebellion didn't retreat. It evolved, proving that responsibility and freedom were not opposites. They were partners. Manufacturers watched the transformation unfold with growing unease and curiosity. The movement they once dismissed had become too large, too organized, too influential to ignore. Aftermarket companies thrived. Older models skyrocketed in value. And in a surprising shift, a few forward-thinking automakers reached out, exploring collaborations with custom builders. They studied the culture's creativity not as a threat, but as a source of innovation. It was then that the purpose of the rebellion became clear. It wasn't about resisting the industry. It was about reminding the industry what it had forgotten, that cars are more than products. They are experiences. They are identity. They are expression forged through metal and imagination. And sometimes, the most meaningful transformations don't begin in corporate studios. They begin in ordinary garages filled with extraordinary ideas. The machine that ignited the movement, small, humble, endlessly modifiable, grew into a symbol of possibility. It proved that rebellion could coexist with responsibility, that creativity could coexist with structure, and that culture could grow beyond the limits imposed on it. Its legacy reached far beyond the streets where it first came to life. It shaped design philosophies. It influenced policy. It pushed the automotive world to embrace individuality in an era obsessed with uniformity. The rebellion didn't fade. It matured. It became a blueprint for how passion can outlast pressure, and how a car built with almost nothing can inspire a culture built on everything. In the end, the machine rolled into history not as a troublemaker, but as a turning point, a spark that forced an entire industry to see drivers not as consumers, but as creators. And the movement it forged still lives today, evolving, expanding, redefining itself with every build, every idea, every person who dares to imagine something different. Sometimes the smallest shift in perspective becomes the beginning of a new future.